Transportation reconstruction. Our transportation sector contributes more emissions, about the same, but tends to be a little bit more than our energy production, even, right? We need that. So our transportation reconstruction will create 8 million jobs, over 8 million jobs, costs about 685 billion over 10 years. And these numbers seem really big, but I haven't said a single number that's more than the annual military budget for a year, right? And we're splitting it over 10 years. So a lot of this, while the numbers seem huge, they're only unreasonable if you accept the status quo as reasonable, right? They're only extreme if you accept what we have as rational. And so it's important to keep these things in mind as we talk about what seem like really big numbers. The only way to make transportation sustainable is to make it almost completely electric. The interstate renewable electricity system can provide the electricity, but to remake the transportation system, it's going to take large scale change in the infrastructure we build, in the vehicle we use, and probably most importantly, in the way that we lay out our cities, right? Modern American city planning is kind of an oxymoron. And it's become very, and even, it's a talking point among conservatives, right? Our communities are losing their character, they're losing their connections. And it's partially because of how we design our cities, right? People are moving into suburbs where all they're surrounded by homes. They don't even talk to their neighbors. They drive into the city to get all of their services. As opposed to, I live in a historic neighborhood in my area. My home's 140 years old. And when you walk the neighborhood, you can look and say, it may be empty or it may not be utilized for that now, but that was the grocery store, right? That was the pharmacy. And they're all in our neighborhood. You don't, and even, like I said, even in my historic neighborhood, our town is designed with all of the amenities, all of the consumer buildings out on the periphery by the interstates. And so you have to drive to get there. And especially in my town, you definitely don't want to rely on our really bad public transit. So how do we do this, right? We can make the electricity, but how do we redesign transportation? You start off with the interstate high-speed rail system, right? This will largely replace airplanes. Not that there, isn't a role for planes, especially for kind of transcontinental stuff, or like transatlantic stuff, trans-Pacific stuff, that kind of stuff. But domestically, we really need to invest in high-speed electric rail. This will connect in with regional public transit, right? So you have your high-speed public rail. It stops at hubs. Those hubs are then connected throughout the region with light rail, with buses, with things like that. As you get down to the local level, we need robust public transit, not only in urban areas, but in rural areas, right? I live in an area surrounded by, I live in a town of 100,000, but the entire region is rural. I grew up in a county of 5,000 people with one stoplight. So those communities need this stuff too, right? We can't leave them out. So that there needs to be regional transit where buses or light rail is going. And the reality is, 100 years ago, even in the rural community that I grew up in, every small town had a train station, and they stopped, right? Passenger rail came and they stopped in the town of 600 people. And you could get on. I actually have a friend whose dad owns the old train station in his town of less than 1,000 people. They were going to tear it down, and he said, "Can I have it?" And he moved it onto his property, and it became a wood shop. But the infrastructure already exists. The rails still run through these towns, but they just carry freight and oil. They pull oil trains through, waiting to blow up. So we've got to make sure that we've got regional public transit that connects into the interstate high-speed rail system. We've got to make sure that we have public transit on the local and urban, especially in urban centers, that can connect up to all these things. And we've got to build the transportation, rethink completely our transportation infrastructure, where we're not building more lanes on our highways, but investing in public transit and things like that.